Welcome back to Tales from the Trenches, our MSP stories. Today, we are going to take a little bit of a different tack because, actually, as Natalie and I were both getting ready for our in person peer groups that are happening the following week as we record this, we decided that it was time for us to talk about our own peer group origin stories because I think it helps everybody to understand where we came from and some of the peer group stuff that we've been through, and kind of tells everybody a little bit about the our perspective on peer groups because I think they were transformative for both Natalie and I. So, Natalie, I'd love it if you would kick us off. Tell the audience about kind of how you started your peer group experience, and I'll tell mine, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I had gotten hired at an MSP back in 2014 as a procurement manager. Figured when I got the job, I was like, I can figure out how to buy stuff. So got hired, and about a year and a half in, I realized that that is not what I wanted to be when I grew up. So I had started talking to the owners about moving to a different position. And when I trained my replacement, moved over to service. Title's kind of arbitrary as far as MSP, but basically looking over all the service, trying to optimize it. So service manager, I think at the time it was like service admin, whatever you want to call it. And I had no idea what service manager even was because I had never been in an MSP or a service manager. I was always, managing offices of some sort. So about 6 months in of service management, I came in and I was like, I thought I was doing really well. And one of the owners was like, oh, you're failing at everything. And I'm like, I don't even know how do you fail at everything if you can't know what good looks like. So I asked to go to a peer group. And at the time our owners were in Evolve peer groups. So I asked to join service manager group and they sent me off to my first meeting, in which I came back thinking we were just doing every single thing wrong with a list of 25 things and freaking out. So that's pretty much how I started peer groups. And that was I believe that was 2016.
All right. Yeah, so my first peer group experience started, I think, a year or two previous to that. I don't even remember what year it was. It doesn't even matter. But, I was at my former MSP. I started off as a tech with the idea that I was going to grow into a leadership position pretty quickly. And after, not quite a year in my job, they said, "Hey, there's this thing that we want to send you to. It's called a peer group." And I was like, "What's that?" Once I figured out what that was and learned a little bit more about it, I said, "Well, sure, I'd love to go. That sounds great." And so I went to Chicago, right? That's where we always met,
Mm-hmm.
at least for quite a while anyway. And that very first time, I think we were like the third or fourth group that had ever been formed in that side of the world. And I get in the cab and I start heading down to the peer groups because Uber really wasn't the thing yet. I mean, it was kind of a thing, but it was still pretty early, I think. And we ended up at this hotel in the south side of Chicago. Was not potentially not in the best of neighborhoods. It was like the hotel itself was fine, but there was bars in all of the windows everywhere, around everywhere, and I didn't know anybody. And so, I said, well, I guess I'm going to go sit in my room because I don't know enough about the area. I don't know enough about the people, and I had a little bit of prep work to do for my first meeting. And in that first meeting, I popped in and said, "Look, I'm actually a project manager at the moment. I'm stepping into this service manager thing. Have no idea what this really means, other than I'm going to be leading the service team, and then I have some ideas about what good looks like there." And it pretty quickly dawned on me that I wasn't quite ready for all the things, right? Much like you said, everything what we were
Mm-hmm.
doing was kind of wrong, or we were missing on this process or that process, and there was plenty of stuff that I had no idea about. And so that group became, my mentors and my friends and the people that I would make sure that I would spend some time with, and people who've kind of been there, done that, and who have, they've spent the time doing the work. And over the course of the ensuing years, I spent a ton of time
Yep.
working with those members and working with the people, and learning a ton about the business, right? That was the biggest benefit for me. And out of all of the peer group stuff, the thing I learned the most about and had the most opportunity to kind of dig into was the financial side of the world, and learning about the finances and learning about how gross margin mattered, and how it impacted things with the rest of the business and how I could change gross margin. And I ultimately started bringing the service managers that reported to me eventually to the peer groups, and like really started to kind of try to level the rest of my team up by use of peer groups. It was huge. And so I wonder, Natalie, what was your top couple things that you learned, especially through your time in the peer group as a service manager?
Yeah, the kind of similar to yours. I'm a numbers person by nature. I really wanted to own the financial part of service for our company and really make decisions. So I really dug into the financial part. I definitely know that I wouldn't be where I am today without the peer groups. I would have given up or figured out an exit at that point because it's very overwhelming. And I really dug into financials and working alongside one of the owners to really dial in our financials to SLI standards, really digging into the SLI books, trying to figure out, what lever you can pull. I think for like 3 years, I followed Ken around at every conference I could, trying to figure out the four levers spreadsheet and how could I make that work and take it back and use it in practice.
Mhm.
And that was, kind of pivotal once I could really know that, hey, if I pull this lever here, it's going to affect gross margin X and Y, or it's going to affect me being able to hire, or it's going to affect things and those tangible things, not just in the imaginary world of things. That was probably my pivotal moment, is like learning that part. The other part is just really the camaraderie and the friendship.
Yep.
I'm still friends with some of the people in that first peer group. I think y'all were like number 3 or 4. We were like number 7 in the groups, our group. And in fact, I've gone on a trip with multiple of them, gone down to Disney World with Tara because she was in our peer group and things of that nature. So knowing that you're not alone was also very pivotal for me. And because I felt like when you have owners that they know they need a service manager, but they also don't know what service management is or what good looks like or how to hold you accountable or what even KPIs for their own knowledge is. It
Right.
doesn't work. And so there's that misalignment of leadership, there's the clarity issue. And so just learning how to communicate, like, this is what good looks like, coming back from peer groups, and this is best in class, and this is what it should look like, and being able to communicate that to my owners, man, that was really game changer for me.
For sure. Now, real quick, you mentioned a couple names in there.
Oh
Ken,
yeah.
being Ken Sponsler, actually one of the leaders here in Pax Academy. He was a coach for a number of years, and was always a really strong subject matter expert, and frankly, a really good guy to get to know. Ken is a friend for the two of us, and I
Mm-hmm.
learned a ton from him as well. And he actually, if you ever go to the Pax Academy, courses on demand side of the world, he actually teaches this four levers spreadsheet, on demand course. So that's worth talking about, or worth checking out if that's a thing that you're interested in. And of course, Tara, being Tara from Imibot, and Tara and you are quite good friends, but Tara's
Yep.
also a force in the industry. So it's worth making sure that folks know who we're talking about to a degree, just so that way there's not a whole lot of mystery behind that. And Natalie, you and I, we met at a peer group meeting too, right? And we were at this kind of bigger event day kind of a thing, and I was kind of looking
Mm-hmm.
for a place to sit, and I just happened to sit down next to you, and we were just started talking, right? And I had that flat Stanley that I was doing for my nephew, and we talked about all kinds of different stuff, and we became fast friends, right? You and I weren't ever in the same peer group. We've never
Right.
been in the same peer group meeting together, other than when I was facilitating for just for a cup of coffee while you were still at the former place. And this is the opportunity for you to make lifelong friends and people that you can bounce things off of, because you bounce stuff off of me, I bounce stuff off of you all the time, outside the peer group side of the world, and we've become good friends over the years because of all of that. So to the point now where our spouses know each other, and we
Mm-hmm.
you know we travel together to certain places, and we're frequently in the same city because of our jobs. But I think we would probably be in the same cities because we're friends from time to time as well, even though we live a couple thousand miles away from each other. So um, this peer group thing is really important, and I guess I would be remiss to not to also shout out to my original the OG SEPG4 folks. I need to make sure I
Mhm.
call it four, because if any of them watch it, I'm going to hear about it. Two of them actually work for us at Pax8 as facilitators. They're contractors for us on the facilitation side of the world. These are lifelong things. So,
Yeah.
Natalie, did you ever go to any of the owner peer groups?
I did not. We had at the time, like our owner came to one of the service manager groups one time.
Yep, I remember that.
Because once again, he didn't even know what service management was, so he wanted to sit in. And at the time, a little after that, before the other owner had stepped full into that COO role and really, owning it, she would go back and forth. And so we interchanged if something just drastic happened and I couldn't travel for some reason, younger kid at the time, some kind of event, she would go to the service manager group. And it gave her insight too, because I was always coming back with this, like I call it my long list. My text hated my long list, um, because I came back and I'm like, oh, I want to change everything, and she was like, no, you need to focus. Like pick three things. It was like the Walt Disney World. Like you could put everything in the drawer, but you can only pick three things a quarter.
Yep.
And so it really kind of helped me. Like I had this long list of things, but I knew I couldn't implement everything at one time,
Right.
as much as I wanted to.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, the idea that you would go to a peer group meeting and then come back with all this stuff you want to do, which is super normal, right? It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's the urge to fix everything all at once exists. The problem is we all have day jobs, and your team has day
Yep.
jobs, and you can only move so many things forward. And so that's where that kind of that integrator to the visionary side of the world comes out, if you to use some EOS terminology, is really important to not overload your team. And I talk about this all the time when I'm talking to, especially when I'm talking to business owners, because oftentimes it's like, hey, I got a new demo and I got this and I got that and I want to do this, and I was like, hold on, how much slack space do your team how much do they have currently, like? And usually I go, oh yeah, but I still want to get lots done. I'm like, okay, you need to prioritize. This is a really
Yeah.
important thing. You must prioritize, otherwise you're going to piss some people off, and you're going to have fewer people that want to work for you for it.
Well, it's really hard too when you come back with 20 things that could make something better, right? Make it more, even slightly more efficient, even slightly better for the team, for yourself, for the company. But when you try to implement too many things, you don't know which lever worked.
Right.
And so then you're sitting there like, well, was it this one, or this one, and then when it doesn't work, then how do you tell which lever caused the issue?
Right.
So it was kind of that, okay, I go to the peer groups, I get all this information, and it got to where you can leave on Friday and you can come right back and get right back in the swing of things, or if you're the Tuesday group, you can leave on Tuesday and come back and be right back at work on Wednesday. But I got to where I really had to take time and say, okay, well, I'm going to stay that night and fly back early in the morning, because I really just want to decompress and like gather my thoughts before I have to like jump back into the swing of things and not be able to. So Tara, from Bot, we would stay that extra night to really just kind of sit down by the fires or the bar and have a drink and kind of go over like everything we learned, and what we thought was priority, and then kind of had like a ideal list, like if we had a magic wand, and then okay, what can we really do?
Yeah.
And then like this would be ideal, but it's not the most important thing, so we could take it back to our leaders and be like, hey, this is what we think is going to move the needle. And as I grew in that peer group and really grew in my career, as service management and then director of ops, just kind of similar to you, it got a lot easier for me to look at my team and my leaders in my department and say, hey, I get it. I've had this list going for 7 years. But as things, there's always going to be things to do in an MSP. Always.
Always.
There's always things you can fix. There's always documentation.
Always a pissed off client.
Yep. It's always there. So just the peer group side of it really helped me figure out that I can't, like you have to have intention.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Like there has to be intention behind it. You can't just slap it on there and say, yeah, it's going to work. It might. You might throw it at the wall and see if it sticks, and 5 out of 8 might stick. But if you do it with intention, and that was probably one of the other things that I really learned is with intention.
Yeah. You mentioned bar time and the and I think back to all of the different conversations that you have and when you're in the room, right? In the room stuff is great, right? Because you have lots of like structured conversations. But those dinners and the in between
Yeah.
sessions and the walking to get a snack or a drink or coming back from the restroom or going and sitting next to somebody different at dinner that you didn't sit next to during the day and have a deeper conversation about stuff, whether it's about business or whether it's about life or whether it's about your role and how you want to move up or do other things or solve bigger problems, can be some of the most valuable times within the
Mm-hmm.
peer group structure. And I remember at the old hotel when we were still with Evolve and sat down, and it was probably, I don't know, 10 of us, and you and Tara were sitting next to each other, and there was a bunch of other folks from a number of different groups.
Yeah.
We were just riffing off each other and having just a really solid conversation about all the things that we talked about, and those can be some of the most rewarding things, which is why if you're going to join a peer group, you got to go in person, right?
Yeah.
You can't just sit behind your camera and say, I'm not going to travel, even if it's going to be disruptive to your business, whether you're an owner, whether you're a service manager, COO type person, salesperson. You have to be able to take some time and get away from the business from time to time. It's only a couple days typically, and
Yeah.
if you don't, you're going to miss out on all of that extra conversation, which just doesn't happen over Teams or Zoom or insert remote platform here. Natalie, do you have any dinner conversation stories or anything like that
Oh
you want to bring
man,
forward?
we were at one of the hotel. The hotel, I think it was the Embassy in Chicago when they moved it to where it was like the rooms were on the sides and all the like open space was in the
Yeah, that was
middle.
Embassy Suites. Yep.
Okay. For some reason I can remember that. I don't know why. And we had a conversation in the room during the day about accountability, right? And how, our owner sent us there for account, to be able to hold us accountable, and but what is actually accountability in the peer groups. And then we had gone to dinner, and we were coming back, and we were sitting there, and I believe it was myself and Tara and a couple others from our group. And our group had some people from Canada, some people, all across. So it was a very big mixture of people. And then we had a couple of, I call, stragglers from other groups that had mingled in. But we had this really in-depth conversation of what the true meaning of accountability is, and how do you relay your goals to your manager or
Okay.
to your leader? How do you coach up when they also don't know what they're holding you accountable for?
Sure.
So we really got into it. What was funny, why it sticks in my head is I don't tend to stay down there too late. I try to go up and, keep fresh brain. And I've always been that person, like, I'm getting paid to be here, so I need to, like, be present. And one of the other guys in our group did not at the time. He didn't last long. Um, he didn't last long in the group or his company. But I remember the next morning, he was not in peer group meeting, and he was probably an hour and a half late. And we all, like, everybody that was sat there during that conversation about, like, true accountability and holding yourself accountable and how do you hold yourself accountable. And he walked in, with that head of shame because he had drank too much and couldn't hold himself accountable. And we were all just kind of like, remember that conversation?
Oh,
And
the irony.
it will always stick in my head though, because that's one of the things, like, you're there to learn, and you're there, like, you still have a good time and sit there and have a drink or two, or, sometimes you have a third one, but you're sitting there for hours, but you still have to hold yourself accountable.
Yep.
And that conversation, because just the turn of events just sticks in my head. And then we also had a really good conversation just within our own group after dinner about what we wanted out of our own job.
Right.
And that's really hard to do because you don't know where you don't have control over your company and where it goes.
Right.
Like what's going to make you happy, what's going to fill your cup, and really like diving into what fills your cup and what parts of your job really you like and what parts you would rather give away. And you know how I am, so I'm like I'll just take it all in and do it all until I'm like but
You'll put your hair out.
yeah. And then it was like, well, I really might have a say in my own path. And up until that point, I didn't even think I had a say in my path. I was just going through the motions of I have to have a job and I'm going to do this and it's going to be great. Until I could really sit back and be like, oh, I really do have control over my own path, even within the company.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way you kind of brought that up, and as I think about it, it's not just service managers and other folks that may have those conversations. Owners of companies
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes don't really know their own path, and or they're doing stuff they don't really love to do, and these peer group conversations, and when you're in the room and you're talking to a number of other people that've been there and they've had different life experiences than you and different business experiences and some similar things, but that level of different experience that comes from
Mm-hmm.
these group meetings, and especially those unstructured conversations, can really bring forth all kinds of things that you wish you knew about yourself before, but now you've learned something about yourself. Well, and it doesn't really matter what role you're in. And so this is why we're making this podcast. This is why we're both here at PAX 8 doing the peer group side of the world, because it's really important, and peer groups can really move your business forward. And that's the thing that really gets me out of bed in the morning, is knowing that if I show up and I do my job well, the people that I talk to on that day, whether it's an in-person week or a remote week, are probably going to be better off for having the conversations. Not so much that I brought something to the conversation. Every once in a while I say something smart, but it's not every day, and certainly not every minute. And it's really important that those conversations happen, and that the groups kind of build with each other. So as you think about how to grow your business, and as you think about how to level up the processes and the people and the leaders, your own leadership, whether you're a service manager, COO, owner, whatever, or trying to level up your subordinate manager's leadership, peer groups are a really good option for you. So don't be afraid to try one out. But if you're going to try one out, jump in with both feet, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not a place to be quiet and sit in the corner, right?
Yeah, don't jump with one foot in and one foot in like, oh, I don't know about this. Like, just jump in head first. Kind of like that cab I jumped into and when that first peer group in Chicago. We'll never do that again.
Nope.
Um,
Yeah.
never again.
100%. I'm with you there. I've had some that's where I've ever had kind of harrowing cab experiences. Chicago is usually where
Mm,
that happens.
I think that's what our first conversation was actually.
Yeah,
Because
because
I
I
was like,
think
I was
Uber
going to
was
die on
sort
the
of
way
new,
here.
and you're like, I've never Ubered before, or I don't
Yep.
like Ubering by myself. And I said, well, I'm going to the airport same time you are. Let's
Yep.
let's hop on Uber together. And thanks for hopping on the show with us, everybody. Thanks for hopping on the call with me today, Natalie, and
Yep.
we'll see you in person in a little bit.
Bye, everyone.